What's up, everybody? This week we take a look at the adventure game that set the standard for future adventure games in its genre. The Secret of Monkey Island. That and a whole lot more is to come, because maybe I am still selling these fine leather jackets. Welcome to the show. You know, leather jacket salesmen still don't get the respect that they deserve, even though that they should be doing. Hi, everybody. Hope everybody is doing well this fine Saturday. I'm not sure what date it is, actually, but, oh well, never mind. I am sitting here. I am not alone, however. I am joined by Dexter Duran. Dexter, how you doing, man?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Good to get another new voice on. We had Luke last week. Now we got Dexter this week. It is really, really good. This week we're going to be talking about not Star Wars, we're going to be talking about Monkey Island. But before we get on with that, I wanted to say a couple of things and just kind of get a couple of things up to date. First things first, I know we're behind with the YouTube channel. Give me a couple of days to do it. We've just been so busy, like I said, moving into a new studio, getting everything personally taken care of. It's just been a royal pain. One of the things I want to do, and I need to know, man, if this is a good idea or not. 90's games. One of the things to do on the YouTube channel, do walk through a 90's game. So things like Mario Kart, Donkey Kong, even Monkey Island. You think it's a good idea?
Absolutely.
Sweet, man, sweet. So that's what I'm going to be doing, looking into getting that stuff together. And, you know, but we got to start off this week with some bad news. Some really sad news. The world lost Stan Lee this week. And he was 95 years old. Man, creatively, one of the most creative minds in the history of creativity. You know, everybody goes on about Disney, but I think Stan Lee actually beats him in the creativity department.
Yeah, he, responsible for just so many different facets of the comic and graphic novel mediums that exist now that didn't exist then. But, I mean, even though he may have not directly created most of them, he's indirectly very responsible for a lot of it.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, one of the good things, too, I think, from my own personal standpoint is, you know, he was in his 30s when he started doing some of his bigger projects. So, you know, that does leave people like myself who is, you know, who want to do great things and thinking they're a little bit too old. You know, well, hey, he was older than I was when he made Iron Man, you know. Mm-hmm. So, man, it's, you know, and you yourself have got a unique tribute to him as well. Am I right?
Yeah, I'm 36, and I don't have I didn't have any tattoos up to this point. Never really had an interest in getting any, but when I was, I think, 25 or 26, I just kind of made this, had this thought that when people that had shaped kind of who I am through my childhood or whatever, when they passed, I would get a tattoo with some sort of symbol that meant something to me that's from that person. And so on my list, there's 7 people on my list, and the very first one is Stan Lee. And because I grew up watching, you know, the Saturday morning X-Men cartoons when I was in elementary school, and that, you know, bled into me getting the comics and getting all the trading cards and X-Men, and by association Spider-Man, and a lot of the other ones just became such a big part of my life. That when he died, I wanted to get an X-Men tattoo of some type. Nothing big, just something small and simple, just like a little tribute. And so when I got the news on my phone on Monday, Stan Lee, you know, dies at age 95, the first thought in my head was, oh God, I've got to go get a tattoo now. But what was frustrating to me, because I knew that, because I have fear of needles and yeah. I don't, very low tolerance of pain. And so that's probably why I was 36 with no tattoos. But when that happened, I was like, you know, this will be, I'll use the mourning and the pain of Stan Lee's death to push me through getting it. So I called a buddy of mine and was like, hey, where do I go get a tattoo? And he's like, who died? Because he knew about the list. And he was like, who died? I was like, Stan Lee. And he was like, oh, man, that sucks. But, you know, I got hooked up. And unfortunately, because it was Veterans Day, all the tattoo shops were closed. Oh. And so I couldn't do it right then. But I was able to make an appointment for the very next day, right when they opened, 1:00. And so I walked in, very nervous, shaking the whole time. And, you know, but I had my plan. It's just, and all it is just the little X-Men logo. It's a black, just the circle with the X, because the X-Men were such a big part of my childhood. And not just the entertainment, the reading of the comics, the watching the show and everything, but just the fact that instilled in me the lesson that Stan Lee wanted to teach with X-Men was because you shouldn't hate people because they're different. And that's the main central point of X-Men, is that people are different. And, through the dichotomy of Professor X versus Magneto of, there's different ways to treat people who are different, and the whole tribalism aspect. But that was very important to me, and that's shaped a facet of who I am, and I wanted that memorialized on me. And so I have on my right kind of forearm there just an X-Men logo, which took about 30 minutes and was not pleasant. And I really hope it's a while before my next hero dies, because I'm not looking forward to doing another one.
No, but it does look really, really cool, guys. It really is a great tribute. That is a better tribute than what my daughter said. I got the alert and I told my wife that Stan Lee had died, and her first reaction was, "Damn you, Thanos." So it's like, oh god, so
yeah.
Oh man, but all right, guys. Well, Stan Lee, may peace be upon him. Legend the word legend is tossed around so many times, and he is a bona fide legend. And like I said, everybody talks about Walt Disney being the most imaginative man. He took fairy tales that already existed. Stan Lee invented stuff out of his imagination.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a shame. Yeah.
Well, one of the cool things that I liked about Stan Lee is that he was before him, DC Comics was big, Superman, Batman, and this is talked about a lot on YouTube, but I like the fact that he took superheroes to a personal level.
Yeah.
He wanted to write about superheroes with personal problems. I think Spider-Man's probably the biggest example of that, because Spider-Man, you watch even just the first Tobey Maguire movie, it's about a kid that has nothing but problems.
Yeah.
But X-Men and Fantastic Four, which I think was Stan Lee's first kind of foray into the real superhero creation, but all of that, just he gave us a new perspective, a new lens to view superheroes through, which personalized them, I think, for an entire generation of people.
Yeah, because the DC stuff, I don't want to get into a big deal about Marvel v DC, but the DC stuff, the people behind the masks and everything, they always seem detached,
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, everything that Marvel did, Spider-Man, you mentioned Spider-Man. I love the Spider-Man comics. Even though DC had more and more real people, the Marvel series had real, as you said, real personas. So for example, Batman, was Bruce Lee, but at the same time, not Bruce Lee, Bruce Wayne.
Very different Batman.
Different Batman. Oh, Bruce Lee is Batman. That would be good. Anyway.
One of the things that it was explained to me a couple of years ago, and I never really thought about it this way, the biggest difference versus of Marvel superheroes versus DC heroes is DC superheroes typically are heroes pretending to be real people.
Yes.
And Marvel is the opposite. It's real people trying to be heroes.
They're more vulnerable.
Yes.
That's the word I was looking for.
Because you've got Superman, who is just, Clark Kent is just a mask. He's really Superman. And the Clark Kent persona is just, it's not real. And it's arguably with Batman too. Bruce Wayne is really messed up in the head. He became Batman, and that's all he is in his mind. The whole Bruce Wayne billionaire persona to him is just a facade. While in Marvel, it's flip-flopped. It's Peter Parker is really Peter Parker. Tony Stark is really Tony Stark. And they put on the personas of Iron Man and Spider-Man and the X-Men to be something bigger than they are.
And I think they touched upon that in the last Avengers movie. It's like, hello, I'm Peter. Hi, I'm Doctor Strange. Oh, we're using our made-up names. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
I'm Spider-Man, yeah.
Yeah. So, but like I said, man, it's a horrible, horrible loss to the world. And you know what? Mm-hmm. He did teach, like you said, he taught us how to love people for who they are, and nobody is different, and that's something that I've lived my life by for a long time. I know you've led your life by that as well. But, he's going to be missed, and yeah, we could go all day about Stan Lee, and we'd find something, but yeah. So Stan, like I said, may peace be upon you, rest in peace, whatever it is, because I feel because he was Jewish, so rest in peace is not accurate. It's more may peace be upon him.
Okay.
So wondering what you learn on Twitter these days, right? Mm-hmm. But guys, if you were on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, look at Because Maybe Pod. Look up our podcast, not our podcast, look up our blog on BecauseMaybePodcast.wordpress.com. And if you are on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, we're also on there as well. Right now, we're going to take a step back, and we're going to look at one of my favorite games of all time, definitely, We're going to look at The Secret of Monkey Island and just talk in general about what's going on and how it went about.
Review Corner for gamers.
All right, guys, this week we're going to be talking about The Secret of Monkey Island. In my opinion, one of the most underrated game series ever. And a lot of people don't see it like that because nowadays, we've got all the guns, bloods, and guts and everything like that. But this was a simple game that was so funny that I think it deserves, more credit than what it gets,
And I'm not sure, being a point and click game, which is kind of what we called it. I'm not really sure what the real genre of it is. But it was the first point and click game that I played. I mean, I don't know how old were you? What was your introduction to Monkey Island?
My cousin had an Amiga, and it was about 1992. And he was already on what was Disc 3 at the time, which was when you're actually on Monkey Island itself. So that was kind of my first introduction to it. The first time I played it independently, I was like, where's the island? Because, I was 8. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Mm-hmm. But that was my introduction to it. And I think the reason I fell in love with this game was, and I'll be using this analogy a lot, was the humor in it. Mm-hmm. It was more than just a simple, as you said, point and click. It was just the reason I love this game. It's a decent game, but it's so funny, and not in an obnoxious kind of way that game's trying to be now. It was just okay. The scene in the very beginning, right, where he's talking to the lookout. Mm-hmm.
The blind guy on the top of the hill.
The blind lookout. Yeah, it's just it's straight off the bat. This is cards laid firmly on the table. Mm-hmm. I think that the point and click element is also while these days it's considered old, but I think it was a great introduction to video games because it was different. Mm-hmm. We grew up with Mario and Sonic, and everything was just jump, hit, jump, hit. Mm-hmm. Whereas this one, you had to do more than that. You had to think. You had to.
And the game had longevity as far as for me at that point, my exposure, and I guess this game came out in 90, and I think I was in the 4th grade when I was exposed to it. So it probably would have been about 92 or so. And it was on a Gateway 2000 computer at my neighbor's house. And it being used to Mario and Sonic and things like that, you would play the game and then you would turn it off. And this game kept going. Yeah. And, being a kid, you couldn't really fathom the depth of a game. And a game that seemed so simple. Oh, well, you just move this pirate around and talk to people. How much can there really be to this game? And I remember the first time I played it, or the first time I was exposed to it as a kid, I never got past the first 3 trials. Really? Which and I thought, being a kid, I thought that was the entirety of the game because it took hours and hours and hours, and I thought surely that's it, that's the whole game. And it wasn't until much later that I even realized that you could get off the island, which I always thought it was so strange to me how Melee Island is the island that you start out on and you do so much work on. And then I was like, why is it called The Secret of Monkey Island? What is Monkey Island? And it wasn't until way later I learned you actually have to travel to Monkey Island to beat the game.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think the largest game around that time was Zelda 2. Mm-hmm. And or maybe Castlevania, right? Mm-hmm. One of those 2 games. But even then, they weren't nearly as long as this game. Mm-hmm. And I think part of the reason was the platform was really stunned. Because with PC games, even back then, and this is not to go into another debate of PC v console or anything like that, sure, but you did have limitations in consoles that you don't have anymore. Mm-hmm. And like I said, this game came out on 4 floppy disks, which is the equivalent now of a game coming out on 4 or 5 DVDs. Mm-hmm. So it had so much scope in it, so much that it could do, and things that had never been done before in video games.
Well, and back then, point and click was about as sandbox as you could get with a game. Yeah. You felt there were so many options because, again, you had all of these little commands, look at, pick up, throw, pull, push, all those things. And then you would just move your mouse around the screen or your cursor, what depending on what console you're playing on, and you would just look for things that you could interact with. It might be a door or a fish, or this one pixel on this side of the screen that you might not even find, or go talk to this pirate, and then there'd be options, and that was the first time for me in a video game where you would choose it would give you options of what to say to a person, and there would be option A, which would further the plot, and option B, which would further the plot, and then option C is like, let's just derail this conversation for humor's sake, and you could just keep doing that, and get the characters, which are mostly pirates in this game, to just say the most ridiculous things.
My favorite one out of all that is like right at the beginning. You've got the guy with the missing eye. And he's standing, and his picture is the guy missing eye and a hook.
Oh, Meat Hook, yeah.
And then he's asked, no, not Meat Hook, just one of the guys in the original.
Oh, in the tavern?
Yeah,
yeah.
And they say, what happened to your eye? Well, we're having a darts tournament, and hey, wait a minute, no, I don't know you well enough. And you think, hey, what happened to your eye? He's got the hook there. It's going to be a hook-based joke.
Yeah.
And they flipped it to, oh no, grog and darts don't mix.
Right. And even grog. I mean, I don't know if I'd never heard of grog before the game, and I don't know if grog is something that kind of.
It's definitely European slang.
Okay. Because it certainly was something, here in America, like. Grog, to me, when I hear the word grog, I think of Monkey Island.
Yeah. And that's the thing, too. Grog was... I guess, okay. From my experience, and one of my uncle's friends was nicknamed Grog, so, I come from that angle. It was more like homemade alcohol. Okay. And so, like when he says, well, what's in the drink? Well, you've got brake fluid, rum... stardust, mud, and all the ingredients that he puts in there. And it's like, yeah, that's pretty much how homebrew in the UK and Europe work. Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing, too. This game wasn't a big success in America, but in Europe, this game took, by storm. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was one of the most popular games. It was definitely one of the most popular games on the Amiga. And, the Amiga did have some good titles. They had Zool, and they had James Pond, and a couple of other things, but this is one of the games that was definitely made for computer like that. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things too was, it was made by Lucas, right?
Yeah, LucasArts.
And while at the time they'd just done things like Howard the Duck and Indiana Jones on the movie wide and everything like that, the video games that they were producing out, they did something called Manic Mansion. They did an Indiana Jones game, which used the same formula. Mm-hmm. But without the humor. Yeah. But as soon as they started cracking jokes in there, again, it just added that extra layer to it. Mm-hmm. Because the other two games didn't sell well, partly because people thought they were boring. Mm-hmm. So one of the things about point-and-click games is you had more control, but it just felt a little more...
sterile?
Yeah. But then they added the humor in and the pirate concept. Yeah. And that took it off to the next level.
Well, talking about the pirate concept, I mean, the fact that they, pulled this game from... the ride, yes. The Disney ride, which I was actually explaining that to someone the other day, and they were calling my bluff. They're like, no, there's no way, because I was originally talking about the Pirates of the Caribbean movies that came out in the early 2000s, and I said, if you look at this game, of course the movie came from the ride, but there's actually a middleman in that. Yeah. Is that the Pirates of the Caribbean movies were based on the Secret of Monkey Island video game franchise, which was based on Pirates of the Caribbean, the ride. And if you look in a lot of those movies, there are a lot of scenes that actually are drawn directly from the Monkey Island franchise, like the voodoo lady that lives in the swamp.
You were the worst pirate I've ever heard of. Oh, but you've heard of me.
Exactly.
Stupid stuff like that, know. I mean, it is weird where inspiration comes from. It is a circle of inspiration. Because now I think that if they ever made a Monkey Island movie, would it be like the Pirates of the Caribbean?
Yeah, it would. But and even Orlando Bloom's character, such a naive pirate. Yeah. It would be hard to do Guybrush Threepwood not, and people think of Orlando Bloom.
Oh, definitely. I mean, his character was completely and utterly, I wouldn't say ripped off, but it had a lot of Guybrush in there.
It did.
His naivete is one of the central plots of the game, But it's just so funny, his aspiration is to be a pirate.
A mighty pirate.
A mighty pirate. Mm-hmm. But pirates they're supposed to be bad people with, bad hygiene and not enough, and no, I'm going to be a mighty pirate. I'm going to be the mightiest pirate who ever pirated. And he doesn't even get close to being what he wants, but he still becomes the hero. You know? And
well, and if you follow into the sequels of the games and get into, you know, the second game, and I don't know if you ever played this LeChuck's Revenge.
I missed the second game, but I played the third.
The third one, The Curse of Monkey Island.
Yes.
That one is the hardest one to find now because that's the only one they haven't re-released.
Really?
And the only way to play it, to my knowledge, is to find an original CD-ROM and play it on a Windows computer, which I don't have.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, they've re-released the original Monkey Island games on the PlayStation Network, which my son has played, and he loves them. I mean, I introduced him to them, and I mean, he went through them so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I remember a couple of months ago they re-released. They didn't re-release the original version. They re-released the remastered version of it. Well, and it was like for $2 on Steam, and I got it. And
I don't know if that's the same port that they did to the PlayStation Network, but this, and I've told people this story before, but one of the coolest remakes to a game ever, in my opinion, is the Monkey Island remake, because what they did was you can play through the remastered, fully cel-shaded, animated, voice acting, you know, widescreen aspect ratio version of this game, but at any point you can press the select button and it switches back to the original exactly where you are, and you can literally play through the game with the original graphics, no voice animation, and you can move back and forth between the two seamlessly wherever you want. And that to me was an extra level of detail in the programming that I think made it totally worth it for the true fans.
Oh, definitely. And the thing is, one of the reasons I'll be completely honest, I love the remastered version mainly because of the voice act. You know, you've got the guys who did the main three characters. They came back to do it, but then they got Rob Paulson involved. Yeah. Now, for those of you who don't know who Rob Paulson is, he was Yakko, Pinky, and
Raphael and the Ninja Turtles. That's where I knew him from.
He is a legend in the voice talent. Like, he's also one of my heroes. I don't know if you knew this or not. He recently kicked cancer's ass.
I did not know that.
He had, out of everything for a voice actor to have, he had throat cancer.
Oh my god!
But not only did he beat it, it didn't affect his voice, so he can still do all the characters. Incredible. Yeah. One of he's also got. I don't know. He's got a paid podcast, which I think he's got a paid podcast. Let me start that again. But like he releases clips online where he takes movie script. Iconic scenes from movies, and he interviews another voice actor. And then it's like, okay, now that we're both here, let's do Silence of the Lambs. You be Bubbles from the Powerpuff Girls, and I'll be Pinky.
Okay.
And I had some fava beans, Snarf. It's like, you know, but that to me, that's what made the remix so good. But I did not know that. I'm gonna have to look at that next time I go through this. It's one of the best things that I've ever seen, right? In I don't think I've ever seen it in any other type of game that's not a sports simulator. It had a full advertisement for a different game in the first
within the game, yeah.
And you ask this guy a question, "Hey, how you doing?" Yeah.
And he's got, are you talking about the guy, he's got the pin on him?
Yeah,
he's wearing
Ask me about Loom.
Ask me about Loom. and I remember being like 10 years old and being like, looking at the people in the room, like my neighbor buddy, and his mom be like, "What's Loom?" And they're like, "I'm gonna ask the guy." And he just, you would click "Ask me about Loom," and he would just launch into this completely unrelated, he would just derail into this ad about some game that I'd never played.
No, I don't think many people did play, but underneath it was like, you know, advertisement. So it wasn't like, oh, they just shoehorned this in. They knew they were making an advertisement, so let's make another joke about it. I think that was the last game that used the Scum engine, because they changed the engine when they, I think it was the second Monkey Island, because they changed the name of the bar that was in there. Was the Scum Bar.
Yes, I remember the Scum Bar.
Well, when the bar was ransacked and renamed, it was because they changed the engine. Okay. And so they just named the new engine after the bar. They named the bar after the new engine.
Well, the second game felt identical to the first game. It was the same pixelated graphics, no voice acting, and I think it was the third game, Curse of Monkey Island, where they went to cell shading and voice acting.
And full, well, I say 2.5D.
Correct. Yeah. But yeah, that second game, they actually delved into a little more the backstory of Guybrush Threepwood, and there was that whole ambiguous ending to the game. Yeah. And I don't know if you, having not played the game, I don't know if you want the spoilers or anything of that game.
almost 30-year-old game.
If you notice in the first Monkey Island, there are modern elements into a medieval. Well, I say medieval, more of a
17th, 18th century.
Caribbean style atmosphere, but there will be like a Coke machine, or something like that in the background. And so there, the first game you just think it's funny. But in the second game, there becomes a lot more of that, and there's a lot more kind of double speak in talking to the characters, where you start to wonder, like, really, when in time am I? And at the end of the game, the way they end it is that it's all been a dream, and Guybrush Threepwood is actually a kid at a pirate-themed amusement park. And so that kind of does the call back to him saying, I want to be a mighty pirate. And why it didn't really make sense. It's because he's a kid, and it's a fantasy for a kid. And so you go back and you look at the first game through those eyes, and you realize that it's a kid's fantasy, and all of these amusement park characters are living it out for him. But then at the very tail end, if you watch through that kind of ending of the game where his parents come and find him as a kid and his older brother LeChuck, and they leave the park, you see LeChuck break the fourth wall, look at the character, or look at the player playing the game, and his eyes glow red. And so you wonder, oh, maybe he's under a spell, and this actually really is a pirate game that's happening, and Guybrush has simply been cursed. And that's when you move to the third game, The Curse of Monkey Island.
And that's why the third game starts off in LeChuck's ship.
Yes.
And, that opening scene of the third one's also hilarious. Well, with Murray the Talking Skull.
Yes. Yeah. And again, that game, I remember playing that in high school on my laptop.
Yeah.
Because I found it. Like I didn't realize I remember playing the first two games and never realized they'd gone on past that.
No.
But I remember in high school sitting there, and that was, this would have probably been around the year 2000.
Yeah.
And so game FAQs existed, and you can go get a walkthrough, which honestly you needed for games like this when you were a kid, and you didn't really realize the depth to which you needed to interact with things.
I tried playing... Most walkthroughs of video games that you get the written walkthroughs anyway. They leave a lot of scope for you to be able to do your own thing. And the bad thing about the walkthrough for Monkey Island is, because I've completed the game 3 times, twice by myself, and then the third time I completed it, it'd been so long since I played it, I forgot a couple of things. So I went in and got a walkthrough, but it was just then some mechanical.
Yeah,
click this, do that, and there was no flair in it, and it's just But to figure it out by yourself, that's the achievement. But
it's definitely easy. And I love games like this. Games that are nerfed where you can't fail. And it's a game that feels like you could fail. Like you're like, oh, well, I needed the big pot to interact with this character to continue the game and continue the story, but I accidentally threw the pot off a cliff, and so it's gone. Now what do? Do I start the game over? And you're like, no. You've got to walk down there and get that pot. The game developers have designed this game to be idiot-proof, so you can't mess it up.
I think there's only one instance where, and they said they only put they had to put in one way that the character could die, and the only way that was he makes an interesting comment that seems throwaway. Hey, I can hold my breath for 10 minutes. Okay, what's that got to do with anything? Well, he ends up shackled to the idol underneath the pier with all these tools just out of reach.
Yeah, there's swords and axes and all kind of things that would be totally perfect for unchaining him from his big ball and chain that's weighing him down.
So, but if you leave it for 10 minutes, he'll die. And that was the only instance in which they could have him killed. And I thought that was brilliant.
It was brilliant.
Hey, you can still die.
Well, but
you've got to figure out how to die. That's
well, and it was one of, I think, probably 2 instances in the game where time mattered.
Yes. Because
in a game that's a point and click and a fetch quest, I mean, you spend so much time aimlessly wandering around that time really can't be a factor.
No.
But the fact that the game would be like, okay, once he's underwater, there's an unseen timer that counts down. Or I don't even know, was there an actual timer in the game? I don't recall.
I think for the last 30 seconds there was a timer. I think, and I could be wrong. If anybody knows, send us a message on the Facebook page. Yeah. But yeah, it's.
Should we say how you get out of that?
Yeah. Again, like with the movies we reviewed, these are all if you haven't played Monkey Island by now, come on, get a hold of yourself. How do you get out of it?
The humor of it.
Yeah.
Because, again, they try and fake you out with all those sharp objects, thinking, obviously, you need to use one of these swords if you could only reach them.
It's the saw. It's like Saw. It's you pick up the thing and walk away.
Yeah, you pick the heavy ball and chain that's weighing you to the ground. You literally click pick up ball and chain, and he lifts it as though it's light as a feather, and you just walk
up the stairs.
Walk up the stairs.
Because he's literally, he can climb up one step, but he can't go any further. And I think those kind of things, was a wink and a nod to the people who like overthought these things.
Yes.
All of the puzzles are simplistic in their I don't want to say simplistic in their solution. Once you go through them and realize what it is, you go,
oh.
Because you've picked up the pot, you've stewed the meat, now what do I do? I gotta feed the book,
and now you have to walk across the island and talk to a guy in some back room, and then give him, it's a brilliant type of game for overthinkers, because there's a lot of overthinking you have to do, but at the same time, about every third decision, they give you a red herring, and it's like, now you can't overthink it at all. It's the most obvious solution in the world. And so they move back and forth, and it really does teach you to think outside the box.
And yeah, that's the thing too. It's how does the 3 trials work, right? And I know it sounds like I'm jumping, but you got to beat the Swordmaster.
Right.
What's a point and click game? How do you beat? You got to insult them.
Yeah, you got to learn your insults.
You got to learn your insults, and that was my favorite. That was personally hands down my favorite part of the game.
Do you still remember?
I remember
insults?
A handful of them. It's like you fight like a dairy farmer.
Well, how appropriate! You fight like a cow.
Yeah, and I think that's the only one I can remember off the top of my head. I can't remember a lot of them.
You would meet these pirates on the island. There's an overhead view of the island you go to when you would leave a town or a section. And for most of the game, when you're looking at the island, you don't see anything. But during the part where you're supposed to be learning to sword fight, all of a sudden you see all these dots moving around, and it's pirates that you can go interact with. And you meet them in the dark road, and you decide that you say, I want to fight you. And you actually have to lose battles to get better. Yeah. Because you're listening for what they say, and you're picking up their insults and learning them, so that when you bump into more people, you're kind of building your vocabulary.
It's major.
Mm-hmm. And you have to wait. And you may go through 20 or 30 battles before one of them will say the magic words, wow, you seem good enough to fight the Swordmaster. And then you're ready.
The one thing about it too was when you finally kill the Swordmaster, when you defeat the Swordmaster.
And the fact that it's a woman, which I thought was great, because they're talking about this Swordmaster and how I guess I guess when you're training with the training guy, he mentions that the Swordmaster's a girl.
I think so, and that was good too, because back then you didn't have any female positive characters in video games. They were all damsels in distress.
Yeah,
and I think Governor Marley definitely was a character who's like, she was stereotyped into being not stereotyped. She was written to be the damsel in distress who did not want to be the damsel in distress. Yes. Damn it! And I'm going to do what I want to do. And even at the end of the game, the hero comes in to save her, and she's mad because he screwed up her plans of escape. Right. She'd already figured it out. Yeah. Now, while we were talking, I decided to cheat a little bit. And
I can't see your screen, so I don't know what you're doing.
Okay, I've spoken with apes more polite than you. I'm glad to hear you attended your family reunion.
Yes.
Soon you'll be wearing my sword like a shish kebab. First, you better stop waving it like a feather duster.
Here, give me one, and let me see if I can remember the response to it.
Nobody has ever drawn blood from me, and nobody ever will.
You run that fast?
Ding, ding, ding. Have you started wearing diapers yet?
Oh, gosh. Have you stopped wearing diapers yet? I can't remember that one.
Why, you want to borrow one?
Yes.
There are no words for how disgusting you are.
Yes, there are. You just haven't learned them yet.
You make me want to puke.
Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue, but I don't know it.
You make me think somebody already did.
Oh, yeah.
And my favorite one, aside from Fight Like a Dairy Farmer, was I got this scar on my face during a mighty struggle.
Something about picking your nose.
Yeah, I hope you learn to stop picking your nose.
Yes. Being in like the 4th grade, you just thought those were the greatest things in the world. You're on the playground the next day, just being like, "Oh, you fight like a dairy farmer," and they're like, "What?" It's this game I'm playing.
It's one of the things. I keep saying one of the things, but I mean, you didn't have that in any other games. I mean, Street Fighter, right, was released around about the same time, and it was full on combat. And the only things that you had at the end was everybody going, "You are too weak to challenge me. Come back, all serious, brr." And these were like, hey, if we're gonna fight, we're gonna fight, but we're gonna have fun doing it.
Exactly.
And when you actually fight the Swordmaster, it's the same. I mean, it's the same way as you go through it, but
she uses completely different insults.
yes.
But all you have are your catalog of responses, but there are responses that will work, and so you're again having to think outside the box.
Exactly, and they do give you a little hint because maybe not throw a word or two in there from the original insult, but like it's the same theme. So like instead of you fight like a dairy farmer, it's something along. I don't exactly what. Hang on, it might be in here.
Well, and I love that when you find her, again, you have to use the shopkeeper, and you've got to get him to talk about, was her name Carla, the Swordmaster?
Yes.
Yeah, so you've got to go to the shopkeeper in town and get him to reminisce about Carla, and he'll be like, "Oh, well, fine, I'll go talk to her. Don't you dare follow me." And he slams the door. And then you've got to open the door and follow him all the way across the island and then through the woods. And it's very complicated getting through the woods. And then you finally get to her like house. She's got a little shack in the middle of the woods. And she's all like standing there like, "Oh, dude, will you stop bothering me?" to the shopkeeper. And he's like, "But I love you," or whatever. And then he, sods off. And then
it's like, "Hey, I'm Garbage People. Do you want to buy a fine leather jacket?" That right there is that's one of my favorite video game catchphrases of all time. I'm selling these fine leather jackets.
Yes.
And I've told people that before, like, why? It doesn't make sense. I know. That's the whole point of it. It's a pirate selling a leather jacket. It's just so random and goofy. It's just one of those things that, when there's a lull, not a lull in the conversation, but somebody said something awkward and stupid. It's like, yeah, well, I'm selling fine leather jackets. It's just something you can do. Real quick, no one will ever catch me fighting as badly as you do. Oh, you run that fast?
Yeah, exactly. So you're having to apply those insults you've learned to the new situation. Well, and do you remember what she gives you when you beat the Swordmaster? What's your proof to the pirate lords?
T-shirt.
And what does it say?
It's
something along the lines of, "I beat the Swordmaster and all I got was this T-shirt."
Yeah.
But what are the 3 trials?
Okay, you have to.
To be a pirate, you've got to master swordplay, thievery,
and the treasure hunting.
And treasure hunting.
Yeah.
And when you solve all 3 of those, what do you get? T-shirts. So let's say I mastered thievery.
Yeah.
I mastered swordplay and I mastered treasure hunting. Again, foreshadowing that you're at a theme park.
Ah. Yeah.
Because T-shirts that say those things would not have existed back then.
True. And here's the other thing too, right? And that's another bit that I love about when you beat the Swordmaster. You get the T-shirt. You go back to the Mighty Pirate. And it's like, all through the game, it's like, Swordmaster. Ooh, the Swordmaster. You say, "I beat the Swordmaster. Here's my T-shirt." "Ah, great. Just throw the T-shirt on the pile. We got hundreds of them." It's like,
exactly.
Really?
Well, and again, that's working at a theme park. That would have been exactly how that would have gone. It's like, okay, thank you. You got your T-shirt. Very good. Here's your little badge. Now go on and do your next adventure.
Well, okay, here's the other thing too, right? And now it's kind of like percolating in my mind. You have Otis, Meat Hook, and Clara. They join him on the voyage, right? They get on the ship. Again? Otis, Meat Hook, and Clara join him.
On
the ship, and they just sit there sunbathing.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Then when they get there, Guybrush leaves all 3 of them on the island. So that's another thing. It's like, "Hey, I made these 3 friends." Well, they're not doing anything. Okay, see you later, guys, and I'm going to do my own thing. Interesting Easter egg. I say Easter egg. It comes out in the second game. That okay, I can't pronounce his name. Let me pull it up. Herman Toothrot.
Herman
Toothrot is actually Governor Marley's grandfather. And he was the original governor of Melee Island, disappeared 30 years ago with, the easiest cop-out when it comes to amnesia, and then becomes Herman Toothrot. And when he comes back at the end of, I think it's either the end of the second game or the end of the third game, and I read this morning, he's actually the true governor of the Tri-Island area.
Okay.
And so Elaine gives up the role of governor to her grandfather, who's been, who went through all the LeChuck problems and stuff like that. So that's a nice nice little wrap up in kind of that storyline and everything like that. But it does kind of, again, it does play to the childish fantasy of, here me and Elaine are friends, blah, we're going to a theme park, and then my grandfather takes over my job, and now she has to go home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The more you think about it, because I'd never heard that theory before today. And now the more I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, if you haven't, you should really download the second one, LeChuck's Revenge, and play it, because it's I don't know if Steam has it to where you can switch back and forth between retro graphics and current graphics. I mean, definitely play through it with current graphics with the voice acting, because LeChuck, and all the voice acting is so good. And I don't know if I tease our band's driver Vaz about this all the time. He is our D&D DM, and he does voices, but he does an indistinguishable LeChuck voice.
Really?
And that voice that I'm talking about, that pirate LeChuck voice that's very dark, very raspy and groggy. And he does it very, very well. And every time he does characters in our D&D campaign, I'm just like, man, have you never seen these games? You need to go play these.
He could be a good voice for those games. No, it's one of it does have some problems, right? And I'm not gonna go too much into it, because the good outweighs the bad. And they did the game did show stereotypes of things that now in 2018 we don't think is cool, like the cannibals that they met, and it was wrong then, it's wrong now, but we now know it's wrong. We didn't know it was wrong then, and but the other way of doing it too is, they it was a stereotype, but not a, I don't want to say offensive, because that's the wrong word, but it was a stereotype, but it was, not intended to be an insult. Does that make sense?
No, it was more like they were trying to pay homage to the tropes of pirate
themes,
piracy,
yeah,
and all that. And so when they were doing their pirates interacted with cannibals and things like that. And again, it was also touched on in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Yeah.
I can't remember which of the sequels it was, but there was that I think it was the second one, where there was the cannibal tribe. And again, that was a callback to the Monkey Island games.
Yeah.
And do you remember in the Pirates of the, I don't know which the pirate, if you've seen all the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
I've seen 2 or 3 of them.
I think it's the second one, where they go and they meet the voodoo woman, but they're in a swamp and they're paddling in these boats, and it's like in a tree hut that's like on some bald cypress trees or something like that. But if you remember the voodoo woman in the first Monkey Island game, she's in town, and you kind of go into her shop, and that's where you get the rubber chicken with the pulley in the middle. But in the second game, LeChuck's Revenge, she's in a swamp, and you have to actually get in a boat and paddle. And I remember seeing that in the Pirates movie and going, this is straight out of Monkey Island 2. This is straight out of Monkey Island.
I think you touched on it, and I think that's probably the way that, not necessarily paying homage, but they were being homeless with it.
Yeah,
because it wasn't intended to be malicious.
No. I thought it was great.
And like we mentioned earlier, they did do some positive things in terms of, like for example, this is the first game that had a lot of strong female characters that your job wasn't to rescue. Well, hang on a minute, but you had to rescue Elaine. Yeah, but if you follow the game through, you realize at the end of it, when you go to rescue her, that you didn't need to rescue her. She had it all in hand. She knew what she was doing.
And I do believe in sequels to that game, she does become she is portrayed as a competent sword fighter.
Yeah.
She does take over a lot of the plot at some point.
In fact, in game 3, they had to, I don't want to say eliminate her, but she was overshadowing her, she'd had such a large fan base at this that they wrote her character to be a statue for the whole game.
Yeah,
where she was cursed, and a lot of people didn't like that. They thought it was, oh really, we're gonna do this, and again, I think that was a mistake on one hand, but on the other hand, unless they were trying to do the game not necessarily 2-player, but 2 main characters. You do some things with Guybrush, some things with Elaine. I understand how they had to get the attention off of one of them to put the other one forward. And a lot of people thought, well, why did you do it to the guy? But I mean, again, it's like Zelda. It's like a lot of things. The series, because while these guys might be competent characters, while these guys might be beloved by their fan bases, the series isn't about them. It's still about Guybrush.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think one of the reasons I think why he's such a beloved character is because he is so bewilderingly incompetent. and he always ends up on, he always gets it right eventually.
Right, because again, the game is designed in a way where you can't fail.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a comfort in that for a lot of the gamers. Is they're like, I can do this, I can mess up, and then it's gonna you can restart the conversation, blah blah blah. But I think it was either the first game or the second game. I don't remember. There's a beach scene where you can, again, option 3 or 4 of talking is usually just to derail into humor, but there was either a Star Wars quote or an Indiana Jones quote you could ask, like, these aren't the droids you're looking for, and the characters, the NPCs, would respond with quotes from either a Star Wars or an Indiana Jones movie. And because I remember at that age, crossovers weren't really a thing.
No.
And so the fact that I'm sitting here playing a pirate game and they're literally quoting Star Wars or Indiana Jones to me was one of the greatest things that you could see as a kid, and that they would do it. And then when you look at the game and see LucasArts and you go, oh, right, well, it's George
Same
Lucas,
people.
so they can do that with Star Wars and Indiana Jones.
And I think that's a good thing as well. I mean, this game did have a lot of crossover itself. Like, okay, the main theme, right, the pirate reggae.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually, if you've ever played a game called Thrillville, which again was made by LucasArts. On Pirate World, because it's a theme park. On Pirate World, you hear constantly the pirate reggae song as kind of the overhead music and everything for that part of the park. One of the things that was really, really good, not just the crossovers, but the fact that at the time, Lucasfilms, LucasArts, whatever you want to call it, George Lucas's production house, they had a lot of goodwill from the people. Star Wars was still Star Wars. You could never say a bad word about Star Wars back in early
because it hadn't permeated our culture to the degree it has now.
Yeah, Indiana Jones was just coming through, and that was a great series.
Yeah, it was right during the time of Indiana Jones' Last Crusade, so they were tying off the trilogy.
And I think I could be wrong on this. Didn't Lucas have something to do with E.T.?
E.T. was Spielberg, and Spielberg and Lucas were very close buddies. So I if not directly, then definitely indirectly.
So they had a lot of things that then were absolutely beloved. Now E.T. is still beloved. Indiana Jones kind of lost its steam after the god awful 4th movie a couple of years ago, with the nuclear bomb in the fridge. And I'll be completely honest, I've not seen any of the new Star Wars the last couple of years, except
Are you talking about the latter trilogy?
Yeah, except with the exception of Rogue One. I thought Rogue One was a fantastic movie.
I think Rogue One is in my opinion, it's the best of any of the ones that have come out in the last few years.
Definitely. I'll go so far as to say it's probably the second best movie in that universe that has been released.
Okay. Because
of the fact that it ended on a down note, but with hope. And I think, the same thing with The Empire Strikes Back. It ended on a down note, but with hope.
Well, that's what, Empire, being the middle part of a trilogy, that's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
You're supposed to end part 2 with a dire need for resolution.
Yeah. And I think they messed up that with Lord of the Rings, because, they didn't end Lord of the Rings Part 2 with desperate situation and hope.
Yeah, and I remember watching Two Towers in the theater, and I remember them being at Helm's Deep and seeing the 10,000 orcs approaching, and I'm like, this is where it needs to end. Is it going to end? And then realizing, oh god, they're going to do this whole battle. Wow, all right, let's do this.
Then again, they couldn't have done that on the third movie though, because then you had 2 big battles, 3 big battles that would have dominated them, and just. But then again, they recorded 12 million years of footage for that. I think that it holds the record for most mileage of film
shot. Yeah,
I think it's something like 385 miles worth of. Another criticism that I have, right, and it's not necessarily a criticism, but there are a lot of cutscenes, and I get that was a way to push the plot forward, but it for my taste, it was just a little too much. Just maybe if it took 4 hours to do the game, maybe 5, you had at least 40 minutes of cutscene, and to me that's just too much.
Okay.
But then again, they had no other way of doing it back then. Because I don't know, because it was a point and click thing, you couldn't just advance to the next thing. You had to have an explanation as to why the next thing was coming, and I guess that was the only way that they could do it. Was through the use of cutscenes, but again, they were just a little too long for me, personally, But yeah, aside from that, man, this is for lack of a better term, this is a perfect game. Yeah. Especially for the era that it was made, it was a perfect game. Now it might seem a little bit old fashioned and everything like that, but
Yeah, going back and trying to actually play the original cut of the game. My son Xander, he's 11 now, but he was probably like 8 or 9 when I showed him the remastered versions, and he loved them. The replay value, I mean, it still holds up to this generation. Again, with the voice acting and all that stuff now, he powered right through them and loves them. But I remember switching him back to the original graphics and going, hey, try and play through it like this. And after a minute, he was just like, that's not happening.
And I think modern technology. But see, here's the other thing too, right? I think, and this goes for a lot of the games that we've spoken about and we will speak about. It was made at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't make a point and click game, even with the graphics, even with the voiceovers today, and it gain any kind of traction, love, or even respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well,
I don't even know what your market would be. I mean, you could try and do, a retro nostalgia and try and hit people our age that grew up on that. But I mean, if you did it for the kids today, I would think maybe as an educational game, but even then, like anything beyond like first graders would be wanting something more involved than that.
Yeah, I mean, like I have an 11-year-old and I have a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old. Anyway, but like, my son will play Minecraft and he loves Minecraft, fair enough. But then when he plays other games, he's playing Call of Duty, which I'm not a fan of him playing Call of Duty at 11 years old, but you know what? It shuts him up. And he's not very good at it anyway. But I tried sitting him down a couple of months ago with Oddworld. The brand new Oddworld with the control pad and making use the keyboard and mouse. And he was like, no, this isn't that good. And when I was his age, when that came out, I was like, oh man, this is one of the greatest games I've ever played, and even to this day. So, I think you're right. Educationally, I think if they convert it into a real educational game, it kind of would have the same notoriety or the same cult following as the Oregon Trail has.
Yeah.
But at the same time, one of the things about retro games being remade with the modern graphic is that now the younger generation are playing them and realizing that they were good games, which kind of bothers me a little bit because now this generation of gamer seems more interested in the graphics than the actual core element of the game.
Yeah.
You only got to look at the Super Mario series. Super Mario Brothers Wii and Super Mario Brothers U. They were essentially the same game as Super Mario Brothers. With maybe one or two little extra features that you put in there, but at the same time, it's get from one side of the screen to the other by jumping. But you put the Super Mario Brothers on in front of them, they're like, what's going on here? But it's the same game. And that was one of that was another thing. All these games that came out on the Amiga, that came out on PC, DOS, even in the old Mac series. Yeah. They're now remaking them for this generation of consoles and stuff like that. And they're getting rave reviews, and their reviews are better than when they originally came out.
Well, and it's interesting to me that, yes, you give them graphical upgrades, you upgrade the audio, but to me, the discussion becomes, do the mechanics need an upgrade to keep it relevant and engaging for the kids today? And at what point do you change it so much that you start to lose the people that played it the first time around and liked it the way it was?
I think the biggest example is Crash Bandicoot.
Okay.
When they redid the Crash Bandicoot series, they gave it a graphical upgrade, they gave it a slight mechanical upgrade. The first initial testers were kids from this generation, who've played all these games on the hardest difficulty, stuff like that. Because remember, a lot of these games didn't have difficulty settings. Yeah. It was just whatever.
Just hard.
Yeah, it was hard. And the way you beat them was you just kept going until you either threw the game out the window or,
Or you called your older cousin down the street to come over and beat that one part that you can't beat.
Yeah, oh, definitely. It's Peebles. Love you, brother. So they give these bunch of kids, maybe 14 years old, playing the Crash Bandicoot, and they were like, oh well, this game's all right, but it's like way too easy. So they cranked up the difficulty, and then nobody in that generation necessarily went out and purchased it, but it was our generation that did. And we played the game. It's like, oh man, I remember the game. Yeah. And the first time you play it, it's like, wait, what have you done? They cranked the difficulty up so hard. So on the one hand, these games are a lot easier than what easier to what you have now. But I think that's another reason because games have evolved as much, because this was probably the biggest game of its generation in terms of scope. Whereas now, I mean, you know, me and Greg have mentioned it while we've been on here. We follow a guy called Slack on YouTube who does a Skyrim video, and he's put like 400 hours of videos up there, and he hasn't even touched all of the content. You know, and that's just one game. Whereas this, you could maybe do 10 hours. It's maybe 10 hours worth of gameplay, and you've touched every single square inch of the game. So,
God, it felt like so much longer when you were a kid.
Yeah. Well,
I felt like I lost months on that game.
I figured this out as I've got all. Time moves faster as you get older.
Yeah.
Okay, like we're already in November. I still remember January. Like,
do you know how I can tell it's November? Your facial hair.
There you go. Yeah, Dexter is the only person, by the way, slight tangent, Dexter is the only person outside of my wife and kids who have seen the awesomeness that I'm growing right now. I'll probably post something in the week, maybe not. I don't know.
It definitely. I'm seeing potential.
Yeah,
I'm seeing potential.
It's Hulk Hogan-esque.
Yes.
No, like I said, I think this is for its time, it's a 10 out of 10 game, and the remake is definitely a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, if you played it when you were a kid, you will love the remaster. It gives you upgrades in all the right places.
Yep.
But it updates it to the point where you are drawn back into it. And if you haven't ever played the game, it's definitely worth a play.
It is definitely worth a play. Now, while I've got this up, I'm going to go ahead and help you guys out who've never played it. Here we go. The first 3 Monkey Island games are available on Steam.
You said the first 3?
The first 3. Secret of Monkey Island, the Special Edition. Secret of Monkey Island 2, the Special Edition Monkey Island 2, LeChuck's Revenge. And The Curse of Monkey Island. The Curse of Monkey Island is available for Apple and Microsoft.
Okay, so now I can finally go back, and my son will be excited because he's played all of them except that one.
The first and second games are $10 a piece, whereas The Curse of Monkey Island is only $7.
Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting.
As of Tuesday, the 15th of November.
I wonder if they upgraded the third one at all. Because, I think with that one being the first one with voice acting and cell shading, they probably didn't think it merited an upgrade at the time. They may have upgraded the resolution.
Yeah, I think it was just, they've made it high def by the looks of things.
Now, there was a 4th, and I think possibly a 5th after that. Yeah. But that's when they moved into 3D.
Yeah.
And I totally was not on board with that. It felt very different.
Yeah, because I mean, it was, you know, the whole point of it was well, actually, you know, I'll go in further. Monkey Island 3 also went into 3D, but you were still at the center of the screen, you know, if that makes sense. But I think Monkey Island 4 went full on 3D, and that's
I think was that Escape from Monkey Island?
I think so. I can tell you exactly. It's one of the great things about having the internet when you're old.
And I will say one thing. There's a game, it may be on Steam if you want to look for it, but it's definitely on the PlayStation Network, and I was showing this, my girlfriend's actually playing through this game right now. But if you like the Monkey Island type of game, there's a game that came out a few years ago called The Cave. And it is an exact style of game like that, to the point where there is an Easter egg in that game. There is a grog Coke machine in that game.
Nice.
Just to throw back to, hey, for those of y'all that played Monkey Island, like, this is for you guys.
If you want to play The Cave, that's available on Windows, Apple, and Steam Network. That is $14.99 for the game and $4 for the DLC.
You should definitely play The Cave. It's very easy to get through. It's cool because you start out with 7 characters, and you have to pick 3 to play the game with. So there's replay value, and each one of them has a separate skill. And what you do is you go through this cave, which is, again, it's kind of like an amusement park, and it's nerfed so you can't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
But each of the characters has their own subsection of the cave that you can only go into and solve their portion of the puzzle with them as a character that you're playing. So there's replay value. You can do different combinations of characters, but it's also kind of that, you know that game Trine that came out a few years ago? Where you've got 3 different types of characters, and you've got to use the combination of those character skills to get through the level. It's very much the same way. You push a button to switch between which character you're controlling. Okay. And so you might have to move a character to one part of the cave, and then have another one be over here to pull a lever so that you can open a door with the third person. It's a very easy game, fun game, and it makes you feel like you're playing Monkey Island.
Sweet. And the thing is, I'm looking right now, I've got the Steam page pulled up for The Cave, and it's actually made by Ron Gilbert.
Really?
The Godfather of Monkey Island.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So that
so there it is.
explains where it
so
is.
A spiritual successor,
Exactly.
if you will.
And judging by your glowing review, he hasn't lost his touch.
No, the cave is very, very... It has excellent replay value. I've played it multiple times. Again, and you pick different characters each time you play it, and you get a different experience.
All right, that is added to the wish list. All right, guys, that is basically it for right now on Monkey Island, because we could be here for another 4, 5, 6, 7 hours, because it is such a great game and a great series. We've got a few more things coming up. Don't go away. We will get to it here in just a minute. All right, guys, we're almost done for today, but we just got a few more things to do. If you're on social media, look up Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, look up Because Maybe Pod. I've actually come up with a plan this time, and we're actually going to be moving forward with that. If you're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, we also have full episodes on there, and on our YouTube channel, we have a whole bunch of other things that, you can't really find on the podcast, like, for example, videos of sample episodes, walkthroughs, John's commentary, stuff like that. Now, I'm a bit of a collector. I'm now up to 2 out of 4. What that means is, as you may or may not know, Dexter is actually also in the Holodecks along with Greg. If you're new to the podcast or you haven't listened in a while, you may not know that the Holodecks are a 90s tribute band, and Dexter is one of the main players. Well, he's singer, guitarist. We've had Greg on here, who is bass player, not guitarist, singer. And in a couple of weeks, actually, Ben's going to be coming on as well, and we're going to be talking about the View-Askew universe. Which is I don't know if that's a specialty or not, because he's gonna have to carry a lot of that load, especially for Mallrats. Mallrats was actually my introduction to Stan Lee, as far as being a person and putting a face with the name and all that. But
cool. No, Ben definitely has a lot more View-Askew universe lore and knowledge in his brain than I do.
I can talk about Clerks, Chasing Amy, and Dogma.
Yeah, Dogma, Mallrats, and Chasing Amy are kind of the three. The other ones I've really only seen maybe once each.
Oh, I love Clerks.
But Mallrats and Dogma and Chasing Amy I owned on DVD, and I used to watch those a lot. But
I've actually got Chasing Amy on DVD, and I watched it before I started working. I'd watch it religiously when the kid, because it's such a really, really well written movie. Mm-hmm. But anyway, going back to what I was saying originally is that, like I said, I've got a lot of the guys on. We're going to put a lot of information in the description below. I say below, we're not necessarily on YouTube, but if you are on Apple Podcasts, you'll see description of what this week is and a whole bunch of links. We're going to put information for the Facebook page and the website of the Holodecks. And do you guys have anything coming up in future gigs? Anything solo-wise?
Yeah, again, the holodecks.com/tour. We try and keep our schedule as updated as I can, although we're in the middle of changing webmasters, so there may be a little bit of hiccup there in the next week or so, just kind of getting everything updated. But we play pretty heavily. Most weekends we're playing. We try and do local shows at least once a month, but a lot of times we're traveling to Houston or the Dallas area or Arkansas, Mississippi. We actually just booked a week in Key West, Florida for January.
Nice.
So that'll be fun. And it's a great time to go to Key West. From what I understand, this will be my first trip down to Key West. And the first trip of our van driving to Key West, which is about, from what I understand, anywhere from 26 to 30 hours of driving. Oh. I've been told by someone that lives in Miami that it's 5 hours past Miami. Good Lord. And a lot of that is on a bridge, which I'm slightly terrified about. Because I've watched True Lies too many times. I'm just going to be looking for a helicopter the whole time in a limo that's out of control. Coming up, we've got a show at the Tiki Bar and Grill the Saturday after Thanksgiving, which is kind of our home base show. We always love to go and do shows there. I think tickets are $10 at the door. And then we've got a couple of Christmas shows coming up. Some New Year's, with New Year's show at the Remington Hotel. And then we, this just went up. January 4th is the Party Gras big event at the Horseshoe River Dome. We're going to be one of the co-headliners there. Tickets are available on Facebook. Pretty much you can I can't remember the website of where they are, but we've linked the event on our Facebook. And I'm always doing little solo acoustic gigs around town locally. You can follow me on Facebook or Twitter. Instagram and that kind of thing, and I'll always pop up an event usually for, I mean, a lot of them are just little fill-in pop-up gigs around town, but the ones that, you know, are fun to come and watch, not just me playing background music for some people eating, but the ones that are actually fun where I get to tell some stories and play some original music, I'll always put those up on Facebook or Instagram for people to see.
Sweet. And guys, if you haven't seen the Holodex yet, I can personally attest to you that these guys put a lot of effort into what they do. It's not just another band, it's not just another show. These guys are super professional in what they do, and they sound fantastic, they play fantastic. A lot of things that you remember from the 90s musically, some things you may have forgotten, but are still fantastic, and you will have a good time. I can assure you. If you don't believe me, trust me.
That's my favorite part of the show usually is when, you know, we'll play a song that someone's forgotten about, and you get to look out and see them realize, like, oh, I love this song. And then there's that light in their eyes. That's always my favorite part, is because then I was like, okay, well, for the next 3 minutes, this person's going to have a good time.
Yeah, so that is it for this week, guys. Dexter, thank you very much for coming on. We have an open invitation for you to come on by.
It was my pleasure, and no, I'm happy to come and talk again. I think there's some more video games and or movies or whatever that I'd love to come and just explode vomit of words all over your microphone.
And I'm actually working on season 5 right now on getting the information together too, so I'm showing you that here in a minute. Again, another sneak peek. But guys, if you were, like I said, if you were on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, look us up. I will post information in the podcast description for the Holodex, and I'll also post it on the Facebook page as well. Next week's show, we're going to keep up with the Holodex theme. We have Greg coming back on, but here's the problem. We haven't decided what we're doing yet, so who knows what the heck we're going to be doing. But guys, until then, have a wonderful weekend. Prepare for turkey, because apparently it's Turkey Day. I don't know what it means, but oh well, I just know we're getting turkey. So you guys have a great week, have a great weekend, and we will see you next week.